The entrance brought more than 5,000 spectators at Gosford's Graham Park to its feet midway through the first half when a Wyong blunder led to Patrick Hart posting the first try. The conversion and penalty goal to teenager Brian Rees gave the underdogs an 8-0 advantage. The Wyong raids came regularly through the second term, some with pinpoint accuracy. But it wasn't until late in the match that they finally cracked the entrance defence. Quick hands resulted in a 4-pointer to Lenny Bevan, the division's leading try scorer. The entrance foiled several late charges to take the match and its fourth premiership. Its last major win was in 1993.
Crisis talks between all state heads of the Shell National Action Group and senior Shell executives were held in Adelaide last Friday. Among the issues on the agenda was an urgent call for a national moratorium on moves by the oil company to implement a multi-site franchising system.
Shell have denied us this moratorium, and we are now left with the avenues of pursuing this through governments both state and nationally.
Independent operators say they'll fight the issue in court, claiming existing tenure on sites is under threat and that the new system will decrease competition and raise prices for consumers.
We will have 40 separate franchise outlets with one franchisee making one franchise decision. We don't see that in the best interest of the consumer.
While Shell officials were reluctant to comment on camera, a statement issued by the company claims the petrol retailing industry is suffering from a low growth and poor profits. It says multiple site franchising would improve efficiency, offering a better level of customer service. Further talks were held in Sydney today, the National Action Group seeking government support from the Departments of Small Business and Consumer Affairs. It's accused Shell of using heavy-handed tactics to force some operators to accept the new deal.
It won't be any better tomorrow. In fact, it'll be a lot worse, and yesterday was the best day to sell. And if you do not accept it at all, you may wither on the vine. Now, those things have been addressed in the past, and we were assured that they would not continue, but we have evidence that they have been continuing.
Melinda Smith, NBN News. "15 holidaymakers who own permanent on-site vans at the Soldiers Point Caravan Park are refusing to leave without a fight. 7 months ago, Port Stephens Council issued them with termination notices. Having regained control of the rundown park last year, Council plans to turn the location into a $4.5 million tourist destination.
Our plans are to upgrade the park to meet licensing requirements, to improve the standard of tourism facility in the park, and to hopefully get a better return to the ratepayers of Port Stephens in terms of the profits generated from the caravan park.
Last week, the dispute went before the Residential Tenancy Tribunal, the owners seeking compensation, arguing their vans had been set up on the sites under what they believed was a long-term arrangement. But the tribunal declared it had no jurisdiction over the issue. Council has since made an offer to the group.
Hopefully that we can give those people who holiday on the park the opportunity to extend their stay in time to sell their vans or remove their vans sometime by the end of January. And for that, all other matters will be settled at no cost to Council or themselves.
If the deal is not accepted, Council says it will have no choice but to fight the issue in the Supreme Court. The offer is expected to be discussed among caravan park owners this Sunday. Melinda Smith, NBN News.
5-year-old gelding Rembatica ran the race of its life in the mud at Randwick on Saturday. The win in the tramway qualified it for the Epsom Handicap and gave Morpeth trainer Di Lumsden and jockey Craig Agnew the thrill of their brief careers.
Yes, he was very excited. He said, I kept looking over my shoulder, Mrs Lumsden, and they weren't coming.
At the declaration of weights this morning, Rembatica was given 52.5 kilos for the Cameron on Wednesday week, with Gay Waterhouse's All Our Mob allotted the top weight of 59. Memsey Stakes winner Island Morn, Brave Warrior, Sprint By and Paul Perry's Navy SEAL are also amongst the 55 nominated for the listed event. Oppressor heads the 44 hopefuls in the Group 2 Newcastle Gold Cup, with Hear That Bell, which ran 6th in the Melbourne Cup last year, a likely starter. Kevin Latimer's RD heads local hopes, with the Waterhouse trained Electronic and Grand Connection among the early favourites. Acceptors will be declared next Monday.
Babies don't come with a manual on how to look after them, and caring for one can be very stressful for a mother.
They often have very unreal expectations of themselves, how they'll cope, how the babies will behave, etc. And coming back to reality can be quite a crash once the baby's there.
Some people are more likely to abuse a child, according to the John Hunter Hospital's nursing director, Anne Saxton.
These are women who probably belong to the lower socio-economic brackets. They may be women who have had a poor relationship with their own mothers.
Or they may have a history of abusing other children. The midwifery team at the John Hunter Hospital is identifying those at risk and offering them education and support during the child's first 12 months of life. The midwives who run the program want to be seen as a group offering support rather than as watchdogs. The service is already offered to women over a 6-week period. It's hoped by providing the assistance for a year, the incidence of child abuse will be reduced. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
The policy relates to clearing native vegetation, trees, grasses and shrubs. In Australia, millions of hectares of bushland have been denuded by farmers. To this day, 150,000 hectares are cleared every year.
The facts of the matter are, statistics say that we haven't done a good job since European settlement.
So, strict new regulations came out last month to try and control the problem. But it seems there is still confusion with farmers as to what they can do on their land. Minor clearing can still go ahead.
People can chop down, for instance, up to 7 trees for reasons on their farm. There are exemptions of clearing up to 2 hectares. I think people, if in doubt, should contact their local Office of Land and Water Conservation.
While farmers may resent the Big Brother treatment from government, the cold hard facts are that offenders may be fined up to $100,000.
The role engineering can play in environmental issues has been highlighted in this year's awards, with an innovative scheme to use wastewater in the Araring Power Station winning the environment section. This clever approach uses effluent from the Dora Creek treatment works to produce water clean enough to be used at the power station for everything but showering and drinking. And it saves the same effluent being pumped into the ocean. The Public Works winner was the Ballina Bypass, again a strong environmental entry. The bypass made possible by creating wetland and bird roosting areas to compensate for the road's intrusion. The Project Management Award went to BHP for managing to repair cooling elements on the No. 4 blast furnace without shutting it down. This has extended the life of the furnace to make it last at least until new technology is installed in the Newcastle works. Clever technology took out the products category. Newcastle company Amp Control developing a unique electrical safety relay for the mining industry, a device that's already winning export orders. Jim Sullivan, NBN News.
"12 passengers and 2 crew were on board an Aeropelican de Havilland Twin Otter like this one when it was struck by lightning during a storm last night. The plane was over the ocean, having just taken off from Sydney's Mascot Airport bound for Newcastle.
All of a sudden there was a great flash and bang that came from the cockpit, quite blinding actually, and then smoke started coming out.
The lightning actually hit the nose cone of the aircraft.
No one was injured, but with lights and some instruments not working, the plane headed back to Sydney.
As we were flying back, you could see the pilot and the co-pilot desperately still looking for anything that would work and looking for other planes around them because we were in total darkness. They had no instruments to land with.
The plane lost radio communication with the control tower. Realising there was a problem, air traffic controllers gave the pilot clearance to land by flashing a green light. The pilot decided to land on the little-used east-west runway at Mascot.
We were sitting in the plane until eventually the pilot asked the co-pilot to go and get a bus for us, which I thought was quite funny because at that stage he then said, "Go and get a bus for the passengers, but be careful you don't get run over by one of the other planes."
The passengers were brought to Newcastle by bus. Engineers are today examining the damage done to the aircraft. Jane Anderson, NBN News. A common perception has been that those who study teaching won't have jobs when they finish. Professor Ken Clements from Newcastle University says while finding a position has been difficult, that's all about to change. Within 5 years, he says there'll be a shortage of teachers in Australia.
In recent years, there's been a downturn in the number of secondary school graduates entering teacher education courses.
5 years ago, about 20% of Australian students were enrolled to become teachers. Today, it's about half that. Professor Clements says the problem is being compounded by the fact many teachers are getting close to retirement age, particularly in the Hunter.
The people are getting older here. The average age is about 44 and it's increasing every year by about 10 months.
The professor is urging high school students to take up a career in teaching.
If we don't take in more into teacher education programs, then we won't have enough teachers for our schools.
Jane Anderson, NBN News.
Their feelings are very strong about things that are happening over there, and because of their disabilities they're unable to go there, so this is their way of getting the message across.
Oh, I think it's very wrong, particularly for my grandchildren that are coming on in this world.
It's the opposition's job to criticise the government, but Peter Collins believes voters in the Labor heartland should be bitterly disappointed in their new leader.
You've got a government that was elected on false promises they've broken ever since they won office.
Mr Collins has accused Premier Carr of a number of blatant political backflips, including the government's decision regarding coal freight.
There was an issue that Bob Carr was prepared to beat up before the election, saying that the private sector shouldn't be involved in this. What does he do? He's elected, he immediately changes his mind, and of course the private sector is now involved.
Mr Collins says the Labor Party went to the polls supporting the idea of regionalism. But given the recent decisions to restructure the Education Department and the electricity distribution industry, he claims the state government is pushing to re-centralise power and decision-making back to Sydney.
With Carr's reforms across all policy areas, you're going to see the end of regionalisation, you're going to see the end of local control, and you're going to see a great deal more control taken back to Sydney.
For months, police say they warned the department that officers' lives were being placed in serious danger. Rosters at Wyong Station allowed for only 3 officers on some shifts. While 2 patrolled in a vehicle, 1 was left on duty at the station. Last Saturday night, an officer was allegedly injured in a martial arts attack.
As a result of that assault, I received laceration and bruising to the face and several broken ribs.
The Police Association says the attack was the last straw. Unless 4 general duty officers are assigned to all shifts, they're threatening to close Wyong Station. Those seeking help advised to leave a note under the door.
This action will probably only come into force of a night work and perhaps some days on the weekends. During the day and probably most afternoon shifts, the police station will run as per usual.
District Commander Chief Superintendent John Toms inspected the station today. By late this afternoon, 2 officers had been called back from secondment. Another officer was placed on loan from Gosford.
As we look into the future, yes, Wyong will need additional police because it is a fast developing area.
While it was promised security on the main entrance would be looked into, the association claims unless a permanent staffing solution is found, industrial action will take place.
It's a shame it's come to this, but first and foremost is the safety of the police who work in the station, and I'm afraid that comes before all else.
This vacant plot of land at Wickham will be the first to display the Building Better City's new design standards set out in this manual. 11 units will soon be built on the site, all embracing the 21 design principles covering privacy, children's play areas and access.
It gives us goals to work to and definitive guidelines that we can say that we've achieved.
In Newcastle, to officially launch the manual was Federal Housing Minister Brian Howe and State Planning Minister Craig Knowles. A joint effort involving building and housing associations, council and various government departments, the manual has been described as groundbreaking in terms of providing future urban designs.
Better Cities is about showing different ways to do things, and I think Newcastle is showing Australia how to go about urban renewal, urban redevelopment.
While in Newcastle, Mr Howe also announced a greater commitment by the federal government to help organisations providing community housing. $65,000 was handed over to the Centre Care community housing scheme run by the Catholic Church. Mr Howe claiming such projects focusing on housing for low-income people were now a major priority.
Well, I think what we're going to see in the future is a more decentralised administration, if you like, of public housing. It's going to have to be more community-centred and be more closely linked with the agencies that provide the services.
Primary and secondary schools from all over the Hunter region were invited to take part, and more than 20 took up the offer. And in keeping with the modern idea of things paying their own way, each of the three divisions, senior, junior and primary, was sponsored by commercial concerns. Huffing and puffing their way to victory in the junior division with the youngsters from Mount View School at Cessnock, taking out the first two places. In the primary division, the home team, Toronto, was successful. And in the senior section, the place getters were Morisset High, followed by Lambton and then Newcastle. It seems aerobics is here to stay.
Geelong and Newcastle last met in June, the Falcons winning both on the scoreboard and in the discipline stakes. Andrew Soudennis received a 3-week suspension after headbutting Grant Kruger. The pair set to meet again tomorrow night.
Andrew and myself are built, pretty much similar, and we play similar, so, it's sort of self-respect too. You want to play better than the guy in your position, so, that can bring some heated exchanges out.
Geelong is out of playoff contention, but after its last emotional meeting with the Falcons, will be keen to spoil the locals' chance of gaining the home court advantage in the playoffs. To do that, the Falcons must win both final matches. But even then, the 17-9 season record would not guarantee them a place in the top four.
It would be as well as any Falcon team has ever done, particularly with position on the table if we achieve that top four finish.
Meantime, the Falcons have renamed their expanding primary schools knockout the Michael Johnson Trophy. The title change is in recognition of Johnson's magnificent 14-year career with Newcastle, with the finals to be played as a curtain raiser tomorrow night.
It's almost a part of Australian culture, digging for pippies at the beach. On Stockton Bight, however, inspectors and special operation officers from the Department of Fisheries are clamping down on pippy poachers.
Here's the biggest pippy fishery on the New South Wales coast. It's been abused.
Pippies are generally used as bait. Some people eat them. If anyone is found with more than 50 caught in one day, they can be fined $300. The call comes after some fishermen were helping themselves to thousands at a time.
One group were found with 9,000 when they're only allowed 50, so it's now giving people notice that no more, we're going to do it right.
Information is being handed out with the legislation printed in 7 different languages. Signs have also been erected to warn people of the limits. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
About 100 concerned cyclists braved the morning's peak hour traffic to pedal from Civic Park to the university. There is a cycleway from the city to Wallsend, but there's a 1.2 kilometre gap between Waratah Station and the eastern entrance to the uni.
It's been in the Newcastle City Bike Plan since 1981, and it's been talked about and it's been said it's a good idea, but that's about all that's happened so far.
About 300 people ride bicycles to uni, and that number is growing.
And they've all got to use that dangerous Maud Street intersection, which has been the scene of a few accidents over the years.
The students are calling on the New Look Newcastle Council to fast-track funds to complete the cycleway. In the meantime, riders are being forced to dodge traffic.
It's worried that the authorities are waiting for a death or serious injury before something actually happens.
Amanda Bolger, NBN News.
This gathering at Araring Power Station is the 8th meeting of workers in 2 weeks over the controversial plan. The Hilmer report, now being considered by the Carr government, looks at breaking up Pacific Power into 2 or 3 separate groups to encourage competition and possibly leading to privatisation. Today, workers voted to fight the move.
If it goes ahead, we've not ruled out any form of action being taken at this stage.
Workers want Pacific Power to stay as it is, claiming efficiency has improved 80% in the last 5 years with power prices dropping. Union members are angry their union fees helped elect a Labor government that is considering breaking up a state-owned resource.
I don't want my money going into a government that's doing this to the worker and trying to pull the industry apart.
It's an embarrassment for local Labor members who have vowed to pass on the workers' feelings.
I'll certainly be talking further with caucus and certainly with the Premier and the Treasurer on the issue of keeping Pacific Power as one unit.
At present, Pacific Power employs around 4,000 people across the state. The union says if the carve-up goes ahead, up to 1,000 people could lose their jobs. Pacific Power's future will be decided over the next 3 weeks. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
A university student's survey of heavy metal contamination of fish near power stations on Lake Macquarie found a small number carried as much as 12 times the safe eating level of selenium. The revelation last month caused an immediate scare, and concerns have also been raised at the Sydney fish markets, which receives a big part of the Lake Macquarie catch.
Fish in Lake Macquarie have a generally elevated level of selenium, and it is on average above the residue levels that are accepted nationally for human consumption.
CSIRO's surveys identify power stations, the Bullaroo heavy metal smelter and sewage discharges into the lake as the main sources of selenium. But the EPA points out that levels have been greatly reduced since 1988.
You would have to eat enormous amounts of fish to even approach some kind of toxicity.
The Health Department has commissioned further research and tests which should deliver a more thorough account of selenium levels within about 6 weeks. Meanwhile, fishing cooperatives are feeling the sting of the scare.
Certainly has a big effect on our retail sales. We expect our sales to go down by 50% until all the facts come out in the media.
The new $3.7 million Australian Defence Forces Welfare Training Centre at the Williamtown RAF base has the dual role of preparing the nation's fighting forces for war and keeping the peace. As many as 1,500 students will pass through the facility each year, preparing for the worst contingencies imaginable and also to consolidate Australia's highly regarded international reputation as a peacekeeper. It's no fortified bunker veiled in secrecy as may be imagined, but a series of high-tech lecture areas and simulators where representatives from different armies and aid agencies around the world come to learn.
Primarily ensure that we train people to better serve the security needs of this country, but in doing so by engaging in a transparent way with overseas countries, that can only assist.
As well as warfare training, there is a peacekeeping centre where strategies for future deployments to places like Somalia, Rwanda and Bosnia are mapped out. Later this year, a delegation from the United Nations will visit the centre. Andrew Lobb, NBN News.
This is the breeding ground of our future gold medalists. 1,000 youngsters from across the Hunter took part in the championships at Newcastle's #1 sports ground, a lead into the state titles. The near-perfect conditions led to some personal bests. 11-year-old Heidi Burgess from New Lambton broke the 200-metre record twice. Daniel Izzard from Beresfield broke the boys' 200-metre record. An amazing 8 new marks were set at the meet. East Lakes took out the zone point score from Maitland and the Manning area. As a Newcastle Knight, Andrew Johns must have nerves of steel.
I enjoy the pressure, enjoy kicking, so I'm not going to let it get to me.
At the business end of the season, every point is vital. Last weekend against Cronulla, the halfbacks' kick to level the score at 18 all was the boost the side needed for their historic win. This season he has kicked 85 goals with a success rate of 79%. Only Manly's Matthew Ridge is ahead of him. And the secret of his kicking goes back to his junior football in the coalfields.
I just sort of visualise myself going back to where I learned how to kick and how I used to polish my skills at Cessnock Sports Ground.
Johns must be one of few in the Newcastle camp who is hoping Manly half Jeff Tuvey is fit to play. Questions are still being asked over his neck problems.
He's pressing for World Cup selections, so am I, so it's going to be a good duel and hopefully he'll be fit.
Meanwhile, Robbie O'Davis has been declared fit for the Manly clash. There had been some concerns over a recurring back injury. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
A 3-hectare site has been set aside atop Mount Penang to host this year's Yellow Pages Australian Springtime Flora Festival. It not only features an array of flowers and landscapes, but also a giant trade fair for the gardening and greenkeeping industry. Over 8 years, the festival has showcased the best in Australian gardens, displays by nurseries and floral societies washing over the site in a blaze of colour. The festival continues until Sunday, and organisers again hope to attract the estimated 60,000 people who visit the event each year. Murray McCloskey, NBN News.
The government is attempting to save money by decommissioning watchtowers, reducing the number of prison officers and replacing them with upgraded electronic surveillance and alarm systems. At Maitland's maximum security prison, guards have, according to the union, reluctantly struck a compromise in the Industrial Relations Commission.
Well, although we've reached an agreement here at Maitland, the state body of the prison officers group have a standing issue with the towers, and there is a rally in Sydney tomorrow with the prison officers, which they've asked all staff to attend.
Maitland Jail will maintain 2 of its 6 24-hour watchtowers. A third will be manned on a reduced shift. 36 officers will be redeployed in the region, leaving about 90 at Maitland. Movement-sensitive cameras and microwave beams linked to a central control will become the eyes around the jail's walls, wings and exercise areas.
We've got less prisoners in the jail, and we sure have less staff, but we have a lot more up-to-date technology, which is there and provides very good security and very good backup for the staff.
Guards are yet to be convinced, and as a last line of defence, they'll be issued with a personal alarm and tracking device to call for help if needed. The new system should be up and running by the end of the year. Andrew Lobb, NBN News.